Evening everyone, it's Jim here. Welcome to our latest AQA A-Level Business revision live stream, and tonight with a couple of sleeps to go until paper 2, we thought we'd do a quick fire session focusing on the possible calculations and quantitative numerical skills that could appear in paper 2. So looking at the quantitative skills that AQA has said could be examined, well, will be examined, the quantitative skills, and also potentially where they might be applied in the specification based on the advanced information. So welcome if you're joining us live, and it's great to see you live. Big numbers, as always, joining us live, and of course in the run-up to paper 2, I'm sure lots of you might also be watching on replay, so welcome too. If you're watching on replay, you get the chance to pause the video, maybe give yourself a bit more time, because we do have some calculations tonight. Not all though. Right at the end of this session, I'm going to look at a topic that I just have a funny feeling about, that is quantitative skills, but I think could be potentially a 9 or even a 16 marker. So we're going to go through that in terms of a worked answer. But I'll leave that to the end, and we will make a start. If you are in live chat, please put your answers into the live chat. We'll have a few minutes at the end if you need any questions answering about quantitative numerical skills as we go. But just a reminder that we've got a paper 2 warm-up session tomorrow night, which is Wednesday night, and that'll be a great chance to pop into live chat any specific questions if you want to go through, I don't know, Greener's growth model or corporate governance or whatever it is, how to answer a 16-mark open question. We'll have a chance to answer those questions ahead of paper 2 on Thursday. And the live chat for that session is now open. So if you do have a particular question that you'd like us to go through, please put it in. Anyway, before we get to tomorrow night, the warm-up, let's crack on, shall we, with some calculations and numerical skills. And no, we don't need sensitivity analysis because that's connected to investment appraisal, which, as we all know, is not in this year's papers. But anyway, moving on, here are the things I'm going to cover tonight. Now, we're not going to spend lots of time on all of them. However, it does involve some calculations, so you might want to have a go. And also, please think about the sort of the non-calculation aspects of these topics, because you won't just get a calculation on its own per se. Of course, you're going to get a two-marker, but it'll be part of a broader question, won't it? Part of a bigger case study. And also, you may be able to use calculations and quantitative skills to add some application to your responses. Here we go. And the first one we're going to do is a couple of easy warm-ups. We're going to do a market capitalization calculation. Jeff is on strings and guitar tonight in the background. So 30 seconds. You know the drill. Give you 30 seconds. Type your answers into the live chat. See how you get on with this one. Wow, loads of great answers and lots of correct answers coming in. A nice easy one to go through. I'll just show Kirsty's on the screen because she very kindly put a working down as if by magic to explain and illustrate the importance of showing working. So in paper 2, you're going to get some calculations for the first case study, probably a couple of them, and then pretty sure you're going to get a small calculation in each of the next 2 case studies. Could be a couple of marks, could be 3, could be 4. But whatever marks it is, show your workings, just in case a slip of the calculator means you get it wrong. But yeah, it is, just to show you the correct answer here, it is 29.41 million, just a simple 14% on top of 25.8. Good stuff, excellent start. I noticed that Graham is in the building, so we've got Graham and Jeff with us on the live chat to help us out tonight. Well, actually, by the way, that wasn't much of a guitar, was it? All strings. That was kind of a different instrument. So maybe Jeff's decided to play a different instrument just for tonight. But anyway, welcome, Graham. Welcome to the session. Let's take a look at our second calculation related to share prices and market cap. So a bit more complicated, this one. A company has 50 million shares issued and last year had a market capitalization of 150 million. If the market capitalization falls by 25% this year, what is the average share price this year? Assume that there are no new shares issued. Over to you to have a go at this one. Lots of answers coming in. I think Callum was the first one I saw with a precise correct answer. And what I mean by that is it included a pound sign. Quite a few of you in the live chat, obviously for reasons of brevity, of speed. Just typed in 2.25, which is fine. It is 2.25, but 2.25 what? It's pounds, because share price is always expressed in currency, in this case pounds. Share price, don't forget, is market capitalization divided by the average number of shares in issue. That's how you get to the share price. And of course, you could reverse that formula. You might be given, market cap and share price, and you're asked how many shares were there in issue. So you need to be able to sort of manipulate these formulae. And we were asked here to imagine a situation where market cap falls by, 25%, doesn't it? Because it's 75% of 150, and therefore the share price. A couple of calculations. That would be a classic 2-marker. Share price is therefore £2.25. Well done for getting that one right if you did. Don't have to have a go in live chat if you don't want to, because it's all about practice, isn't it? But well done for having a go and putting your answers into the live chat. We're going to move on from share prices and market cap to another quantitative skill that could get examined. I think pretty likely, really, because we know that paper 2 is going to have a very strong marketing orientation, don't we? We know from the advanced information that all of marketing is in there. Therefore, that's kind of setting the case study up to have a strong marketing orientation. So could you be very easily given some data, maybe an appendix showing some information about different businesses or different markets, maybe calculating market size, market growth. And in this case, we wanted to calculate market share. So we've got a table there with 3 businesses operating in different markets. Business A operates in a market with a market size of 250 million and its sales are 20 million. And you can see the same data for business B and business C. So different markets, different sales, different market size. The first question to work out is which business of those three has the highest market share? Over to you. No music this time. This is just, you'll have to imagine me strumming the guitar. Whilst we're doing that, Davina's asking, what does market capitalisation show about a business? Well, what market capitalisation is, Davina, is the value of a business expressed at a particular moment in time, as reflected in a share price, how much per share that you have to pay to buy a share in the business, and clearly the value of the business, in theory, the market cap, is the number of shares that you could buy times the price you have to pay. So that's what market capitalisation is. It's a measure, not the only one, but it's a useful measure of the value of business. Lots of people are putting their answers into the live chat. As Graham's pointed out in live chat, don't forget you could be given some market size by volume. So you might be given units. In this case, we're given market size by value, which is in currency. And Kirsty has gone the full hog again and given me the working. So thanks, Kirsty. I'll try to get some other people on the screen as well. But well done for showing me your working, and you're suggesting it's business C, 12.5%. That looks about right to me. Business B, 12%, you're saying. Business A, 8%. And lots of others in the live chat have got the same answer. You're all saying business C. So let's put Kirsty's workings to one side with a big tick next to those, full marks. And indeed, yeah, business C has the highest market share. Don't forget market share. It's like all these formulae, you have to learn them. Market share is the sales or the volume, the sales volume of a business divided by the market size. So in this case, business C had total sales of 10 million divided by its market size of 80 million, which means it's got a 12.5% share. So for example, for every £1 million worth of sales achieved by that achieved in the market, business C will grab 125,000 of them, won't they? 12.5%. Now let's use the same data and just do a slightly more complicated calculation. So have a look at this one. Business B isn't happy with having a market share of 12%. Oh no, it wants a market share of 15%. So how much does business B's sales need to change to achieve the target market share of 15%? Assume that the market size stays the same. So over to you. What does business B need to do to increase its sales in order to achieve a market share of 15%? Read that question carefully. So give yourself some time, 30 seconds or so. Graham's again, lots of exam gold being added to the live chat, so I will pick out some gold. In fact, I'll just put Graham's comment on the screen here just to remind me. Yeah, absolutely right about market share. Don't forget, you must show it as a percentage. So thanks for reminding me. Market share is a percentage, of course, expressed, whether it's be value or volume, always express it as a percentage because it's a share, isn't it? It's a proportion of the market. Let's have a look at some of the answers coming through here. So you'll have to excuse my occasional hesitation because I'm trying to work the live chat as well as the PowerPoint, as well as this mic, and also try to keep an eye on the football as well. So let's have a look. Let's put, I think Harry has gone for 4.5 million increase. Sochi has gone for the same, 4.5 million increase. This is very encouraging. Ben's given me the workings. Even better, Ben's taken a leaf out of Kirsty's book, giving me the workings. And that was a really important point, was that. Well done for everyone who put that answer, because I asked for what did the increase in sales need to be. So, for example, if you'd put £18 million, that would be halfway there, wouldn't it? Yes, that's what their sales need to be. Sorry, if you put £22.5 million, that's what their sales would need to be. However, that's an increase of 4.5. 4.5. Superb stuff. Right, well, there we go. We've done 10 minutes or so on marketing maths. We've done a bit of market capitalization. Let's move on to our next exciting topic, which is it's a question for you. What do you think? Do sales of ice cream increase when outside temperatures rise? What do you think? What do we think? Most people saying yes. And they would, wouldn't you? You'd expect as maybe an independent variable like temperature, if it rises significantly and over a sustained period, you might expect sales of ice cream to increase. Therefore, ice cream sales might be dependent on the independent variable, which in this case is temperature. What about this one? In a marketing point of view, let's say you have got a marketing case study in the exam on Thursday, and one of the things that you're asked to consider is whether or not the business should increase promotion. Promotion is an area that's not been widely examined so far across AQA. But maybe you've been given some data, some data that maybe makes a link between some data points, a link between the amount spent on promotion and the sales of a business. You could potentially start to consider the value of correlation. And also, don't just link this just to marketing. What about the link? Is there a link between if we make employees better motivated, either through financial or non-financial or a mix of those methods? Does that therefore influence customer satisfaction? And in what situations might that take place? I put those three questions on the screen just to introduce a concept which hasn't been really properly examined over the last few years, but is definitely a game for paper 2 this time with the advanced information. Correlation, and we're also going to spend a minute looking at extrapolation. So just a minute or two on correlation here, the strength of a relationship between two variables. Now, just a quick bit of revision in case you're not absolutely up to speed with this idea of correlation. The basic idea is that there could be an independent variable, a factor that is completely independent of the dependent variable, a variable that is influenced by the independent variable. And so it could be that you might be asked to interpret some kind of scatter chart or some other graphical element that shows some data points and ask you to consider, maybe they've drawn a line of best fit, tried to explain what the correlation could be. It could be that you're faced with a situation in the case study where we have to consider the role of correlation in particular in sales forecasting. So I just thought we'd just quickly revise that and get your thoughts on it. So typically what we do with correlation is we plot data points. So there's some data points on a chart, and obviously we've got two axes. Typically we plot the independent independent variable on the x-axis and the dependent variable on the y-axis. So for example, exchange rates are examinable in paper 2 this year. So for example, as the pound-dollar exchange rate rises, it could be that actually that is correlated, or those data points are correlated with increased demand for overseas holidays. In this case, I've put holidays to Florida. So what kind of correlation would that be? In the live chat, please. Being straight in there with strong positive correlation. What else have we got there? Chris is saying strong positive correlation. Armand's saying strong positive correlation. If you're saying that, it must be the case, isn't it? So yeah, well done. It is. That data point there, those data points, if we drew a line of best fit, the whole idea of correlation is the relationship between data points on these two axes. And the closer that those data points are together to the line of best fit, the more that suggests a relationship. In this case, a positive relationship. So as the pound dollar goes up in value, well, that would you might expect demand for Florida holidays to go up, because it means that Florida holidays are cheaper, aren't they? We get more dollars for each of our pounds. And of course, correlation could be negative. So it might not be just positive correlation in the exam. It could be you get a situation like this where there is actually a negative correlation. So for example, interest rates, which are examinable, monetary policy in paper 2 on Thursday, how do they potentially link to demand for something? For example, demand for new houses. Now, I have no idea what the correlation is between interest rates and mortgages, but I can believe that as interest rates rise, demand for housing could weaken. But you can see from that that's relatively weak. So when you're looking, if you do get correlation scatter graphs in the exam on Thursday, look for how close the dots, the data points are. If they're scattered all over the place or widely dispersed from a line of best fit, that would suggest weak correlation. If they're really tightly linked to the line, that would suggest strong correlation. Of course, it could be that you just have a whole bunch of data points that are not related whatsoever. I think that's pretty unlikely. No correlation. But I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes on that because it's an area that is definitely examinable on Thursday. And we know from the advanced information that you might be asked to interpret different graphical forms. I've got one more coming up, which I think is even more likely. But don't be thrown if you get given maybe an appendix that shows some data points and some reference to correlation, because you're really just looking for that positive or negative relationship and how strong it is. Good stuff. Right. Okay. Now, we also talked about extrapolation, so over to you this time. Does anyone know what that chart might be? It shows quarterly sales of something. I'll give you 30 seconds in the live chat. First person to get the correct product in the live chat will get a particular shout out. So that shows quarterly sales of a particular product type in the last 12 years, actually. The last 12 years. What do we think? Armand's pretty close, but not the right product, but the right maker. And it's not the iPhone. It's not Choose to You memberships. That will be a very different chart, I can tell you. Let's see. It's not Samsung. It is Apple, but it's not the iPhone. And Sabrina, I think, was first in. Nicola and Sabrina first in, and Kirsty. It is the iPad. So that's interesting, isn't it? There we go. That's the quarterly sales of Apple iPads since 2010, up to a couple of weeks ago. Now, extrapolation could come up in paper too, because we know that one of the case studies is likely to have, not certain, but likely to have quite a strong marketing orientation. So it could. Now, I don't think you're going to get a chart quite like that with lots and lots of bars, but you could easily get a bar chart with 7 or 8 data points, maybe trying to show a trend or not. And the question would be, in sales forecasting, can you rely on extrapolation? That's the key point of extrapolation. Can you use trends to predict the future? Well, if you're using this chart, you'd have a bit of a hard job, wouldn't you? Because if you were extrapolating iPad sales in the first 5 years, you'd say, well, look at them going, and you just expand that green line and say, well, iPad sales will continue to grow, and then all of a sudden the product life cycle clicks in, and Apple iPad sales start falling. The trend is down in value terms, and you think, well, okay, if I'm going to extrapolate that, surely that's going to continue to go down. However, what happened in the last 2 years? Apple iPad sales have started to grow again very strongly. In the live chat, any thoughts as to why that is? Why have Apple iPad sales suddenly started to rise consistently and strongly? What do we think? What do we think? Callum's saying extension strategies. Absolutely. Any particular examples of what those extension strategies might be? Sophie's saying new product development, new product releases. Cena's now we're using such as seasoning. Cena's saying new chips like the M1 chip. In other words, and that is the reason why one of the reasons why the iPad has suddenly become incredibly popular. Well done for that. Differentiation of the product. Sochi's gone for increasing use in educational establishments, replacing desktops and laptops. COVID, Timor, absolutely right. Suddenly, too right. This is superb stuff. So lots of reasons why all of a sudden iPad sales are starting to take off again, when everyone thought they were approaching the decline phase, or the maturity phase certainly, of their product life cycle. So the reason why I've spent a couple of minutes on this is you might be given some data, and there might be some talk about using extrapolation to forecast sales. But as Graham has pointed out in the live chat, be really careful with extrapolation, because there could be a whole host of factors that mean that the trends are not repeated. Over to you. Question is, should Apple forecast iPad sales revenue assuming that sales continue to grow? Over to you. Give me a reason, or give me 3 reasons why Apple should be cautious about using extrapolation to forecast iPad sales in the next few years. And I'll try to pick out a few contributions and stick them on the screen. Lots of great answers coming in here. I'm just picking a few out to stick on the screen here. Lots of different ones. Apologies if I don't put yours on the screen. But I mean, I'm just putting a whole bunch of them in here. Harry, this looks like an amazing point here, because the M1 chip was a large leap forward in regards to innovation. Hard to replicate the same level of innovation and hype. That is sensational application. Hasnat's also made a point about the external environment. That can change suddenly. I'll come back to that in a second. Charlotte's made a great point, which is actually a really important point about, which is your key evaluation point about extrapolation. So, for example, I don't know, let's say you've got a 16 marker that mentioned extrapolation. This is where your evaluation point would come in. Superb stuff. Well done, everyone. Thanks very much for those contributions. I've just typed out a few answers, but nowhere near as strong as yours. But let's just go through them. So it was Charlotte's point and Ben's point about changing economic conditions. So China is a big market for Apple. Russia was until recently. So emerging markets in particular, the nature of demand can change very quickly in those, which impacts sales revenue, perhaps in unexpected ways, as we know. Are there any further extension strategies planned? So can you sustain growth? So whichever case study business you get, and if you're asked about extrapolation, consider that. What are they doing to sustain the trend in sales? And also it could be that there are shortages in supply. So it's not just a marketing thing. It could be that actually they're not able to produce as many items or products as they wish to. Therefore, that constrains sales. So such as seasoning appears there, such as chips and retina screens, just to make it sound like I know something about Apple iPads. I know a bit about them, but nowhere near as much as you lot. Superb stuff. Now, so don't forget, there's a download for this, which I'll add to the website, tutortu.net/live. You need to be aware of the various benefits and disadvantages of extrapolation as a method of sales forecasting. Basically, it's really easy. The data is always available because it's past sales, and you can draw a line, so it's quick and cheap. The problem, though, with extrapolation is, as you said in live chat, the past is an unreliable guide to the future in so many ways for so many different reasons, particularly around competitor actions, the changing economic environment, and so forth. Superb stuff. So I think we've dealt with correlation and extrapolation there. I think you'll be in good shape. We've got a couple more to have a look at. Well, 3 more to have a look at. Your favourite, my favourite, PED and YED, economic data, and then we've got our bonus topic, which I've got a funny feeling about for the exam. So PED and YED, let's do this quickly. Don't forget, we're not going to be asked to calculate profit, costs, that kind of stuff in this exam. So, but we do know that PED and YED is in there. We know absolutely for sure that it's in paper 2 because it's a quantitative skill that's mentioned specifically and it's in the advanced information. So it has to be in there. The most likely scenario is you're going to be given some coefficients and perhaps either asked to apply them in a marketing sense or interpret them, use them to support your analysis. So let's quickly do PED and YED. Starting with PED, here's some data about a business. It has sales this year of 150,000 units. Calculators at the ready. The selling price per unit this year is £50 and the market size is 100 million. Big numbers tonight in the data we're using. So, question. The business estimates that the PED of its products is minus 0.75 and it's considering increasing the selling price from £50 by 10%. So over to you, please calculate, and this is going to take you a minute or two, calculate the business's expected market share next year. So we're sticking with a marketing focus here, assuming everything else remains equal. So assuming it increases the selling price by 10% and the PED is minus 0.75. So have a go at that one. You might struggle to get the workings in the live chat, so don't worry about that. This is, as Graham said, quite a tricky question. We've got sort of 3 or 4 parts to this. But if we can get this one right, then nothing they can send you on Thursday will throw you at all. Yeah, Zaina, we'll go through the concept of price elasticity, price inelasticity very briefly. We're going to focus on the application of calculations in this one. So the PED is minus 0.75, but we're going to increase our selling price by 10%. So we know that we're going to have to apply a higher selling price to our units, but our units will change, won't they? So, and in theory, units will fall, won't they? It's minus 0.75. Our higher selling price should mean a lower sales volume. So they're going to fall, but by how much? Therefore, what are our sales going to be? Not an easy question, this, at all. And it's a kind of question, if you get, it's worth having a go with each element, because there are marks going for each element. I'll just put Graham's tip on the screen here as well. Remember that a PED of minus 0.75 means that for every 1% change on price, the quantity demanded changes by 0.75. So, for example, a 10% increase in price will mean a 7.5% decrease in quantity demanded. And we have some answers coming through. A lot of answers coming through, not all the same, although good news, they all have percentages on them. And what have we got here? Sochi's saying 7.63%. Shazab agrees with that. Harry agrees with it. William agrees with it, although he's not put a percentage sign on it, but I'm sure that was on its way. And Callum agrees with it. So this is looking good. One or two different answers coming through, but that's not a problem, because don't forget you get marks for showing your workings. So let's go through it. The answer is indeed 7.63%, I believe, to 2 decimal places. I've checked this. I'm pretty sure it's right. You know me. The mistakes do happen, but I'm pretty sure I got this right, because we know that we're going to sell fewer units next year. And as Graham said, because the price has gone up by 10%, we should expect a 7.5% fall in quantity sold. So our quantity sold will fall to 138,750 units. Our selling price, well, this bit was a bit easier because we're told it's 10% higher. So rather than £50, it's going to be £55 per unit. There's two parts to working out our sales next year. So multiply £55 times by the new units. That's 7.63125 million. While the last bit, the market share, was easier. We just divide by 100 million. So we've got 7.63% of the market. So that was quite a complicated question, but it asks you to apply the PED coefficient in the context of a marketing situation, which I think is the most likely there if there's a calculation, because we know that we're not going to be asked to calculate profit and that kind of stuff. So hopefully that's useful. And minus 0.75, that suggests that the business is price inelastic, doesn't it? So we can increase the price by 10%, but sales volume will only fall by 7.5%. Therefore, we might expect sales to increase as a consequence of overall sales to increase as a consequence of that decision. Good stuff. Right, we've done PED. Let's do a bit of YED, income elasticity demand. A luxury house builder saw sales increase from 15,000 houses per year to 17,100 houses due to a 7% increase in income levels. What is the YED, the income elasticity of the business? Have a go at that. Lots of answers coming through. Well done. That's quick work. Don't forget income elasticity demand. We do need to take account of the plus or minus sign here, whereas we don't bother with PED. It's the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in incomes, not price, incomes. And lots of people are putting the answer in. I won't put them on the screen because there's so many answers coming through. It's 2. Now you won't be asked to calculate the coefficient. However, it's really important to be able to apply the coefficient. That's why the best way to understand PED and YED is to, and that's why I've put a calculation on, is because if you understand how it's calculated, it's a lot easier to apply it to a situation like we just did with that market situation. So the answer is indeed 2. It's not 2%, it's 2. It's plus 2 as well. As incomes rise, demand rises. In this case, luxury houses. Well done. Right. 2 more to go, I think. And the next part is just picking up on 3.7. We've got that little block, haven't we, in advanced information that says inflation, economic growth, exchange rates, globalization, emerging markets could be examined in paper 2. So that could be, no guarantees, but it could be that you might have a sort of mini case study, maybe the second or third case study, where there's some economic data and maybe something around, as we did in that 16-mark open question a couple of nights ago, thinking about the impact on exchange rates on the profit of a business. It was Hellenic, wasn't it? Do you remember? Worth having a look at that video if you've not looked at it yet, where we looked at some 16 markets. Anyway, I digress. So on the screen, I've got some economic data for you. I'm going to ask you some questions. Now, that you're not meant to be an economist. If you are an A-level economist, well done. If you're not, don't worry. Chances are you'll be able to give me a simpler answer to the question rather than the A-level economists. So there's some data on the screen there, and we've got annual data, actual for 2021 and forecast for 2022. And it's not precise. It's not far off, but it's not precise. So if any economists out there saying, Jim, your data's out by 2.25%, well, okay, that's the way it is, isn't it? So here's your first question. How much will prices have risen in 2022 compared with 2021 based on that data? By how much will prices have risen in 2022 compared with 2021? What's the answer to that? And the answer is on the table. You don't need to do a calculation. What do we think? So there's a variety of answers coming in here. And the answer, I believe, is correctly, the answer, we might argue about this, but I think the correct answer on this one is 9%, isn't it? Because the inflation rate is the average increase in prices over the last year. So if you took a snapshot, 9% is the increase in prices for the last 12 months, the last year. So the inflation rate has increased from 4% to 9%, but the inflation rate is 9%. That's what inflation measures. Now, don't forget, inflation has not yet been examined in the AQA exam. It's one of those hot topics. It's going to have to come up at some stage. Quite likely, I think, to maybe make an appearance in paper 2. And it could be that you have to consider the implications of rising inflation, perhaps on a business, perhaps on its costs. So that was the answer to that question. Now, here's a calculation for you to do. What is the percentage change in the pound-dollar exchange rate between 2021 and 2022? What do we think? What is the percentage change? Look, I can hear lots of calculators being used here. Now, don't forget, I've asked for a percentage change, so I'm expecting to see a percentage sign in the answer, and I think I'd also expect to see a plus or minus in the answer as well. And no sooner have I said that than loads of people have gone for, I'll just stick a couple on the screen there. Amy's going for minus 10.7%. Michiel's going for minus 10.71%, to 2 decimal places. Harry and Holly's going for minus 10. Harry's going for minus 10. Loads of people are going for Ben, minus 10%. Well done. It is indeed. Let's just confirm that on the screen there. It is minus 10.71%. So just to explain how we got to that, the pound has depreciated, has fallen in value compared with the dollar between those 2 years. It was worth $1.40. Now, well, in 2022, $1.25. So it's fallen by 15 cents. It's the difference divided by the original. The original was 140, so it's 15 cents over 140, but it's fallen. In other words, it's become less valuable as the pound compared with the dollar, which is good news for importers. However, it's bad news, isn't it, for exporters? So 10.7 minus 10.71%. Sorry, it's bad news. It's bad news for importers, good news for exporters. The other way around. It's not a stronger pound, it's a weaker pound. It's been a long day. Good stuff. Last question. Looking at the GDP line, is the value of the UK economy, as measured by GDP, gross domestic product, is it forecast to fall in 2022? What do we think? That's a simple yes or no answer. What do we think? Is it forecast to fall in 2022? And most people are saying, haha, that's interesting. The answer is no, it's not. Because the forecast there suggests that GDP will grow in 2022 by 2.5%. In other words, the value of the economy will grow. However, the rate of economic growth will fall from 7% to 2.5%. So the value of the economy as measured by GDP in 2022, if you believe that forecast, it will grow, but not by as much as the growth in 2021. So the rate of economic growth is how fast an economy is growing or shrinking. If it's negative, then the value of the economy is falling. But in this case, it just means lower growth. But it doesn't mean that the value of the economy, it doesn't mean that GDP is falling, but lower growth. There we go. Bit of interpretation of economic data. Right, we have got 10 minutes to have a go at my hot topic. I have no idea whether it's going to come up or not. But anyway, let's go through it for 10 minutes. I want to do a quick quantitative skills recap and ask you some questions on some data. But then we'll just do a couple of minutes on a potential 9-mark question on this, which is inventory control charts. Your favourite diagram, my favourite diagram. So, and to explain this, we're going to enter the wonderful word of sheds. And if you don't know what a shed is, it's a building that typically sits outside, often made of wood, usually made of wood, and houses garden implements, occasionally with windows that people sit in and work in. And we're told some information about the shed industry. Demand for sheds is highly seasonal, with demand highest during the spring months of March, April and May. So don't forget, if you're given information, the examiner's given it to you for a reason. Highly seasonal demand. April and May, when many homeowners decide to spend on their garden. Since 2020, there has been a significant increase in demand for sheds, partly due to more people working from home and the greater take-up of gardening. There we go. Now we're going to have a look at an inventory control chart now. By the way, did I ever tell you that I used to work in a shed factory? I was responsible for putting all the sheds together. And, well, actually, I got sacked for shoddy workmanship. But as I was leaving the factory, I thought to myself, well, as one door closes... Now, moving on. So here's our inventory control chart, and it's a control chart for a business called Garden Rooms. You may have seen this case today. It's one of our AI shorts. Garden Rooms sells sheds, and it buys them as finished sheds from suppliers, and it uses an inventory control chart to determine how many sheds it holds in inventory. So looking at that chart there, let's just look into this chart in a little bit more detail. Don't forget, inventory control chart, it will typically look something like that. It will show the stock level on the left-hand side in units, and typically the chart should always show the timeline on the bottom or the x-axis, and we can see that we seem to have a maximum stock level of 400 sheds and a minimum stock level of 100, and each time we buy it, we seem to get 300 sheds. Each time we reorder sheds, we seem to get 300 sheds in from our supplier or suppliers. So let's have a look at our first question. From that chart, what is the average weekly demand for sheds? Over to you. What is the average weekly demand for sheds? And you can work it out from the inventory control chart. What do we think? Difference of opinion here. Callum says 75. Tom saying 75. Harry's saying 125. We've got 150 mentioned several times. but most people are saying 75. I suppose it depends how clearly you can see the inventory control chart on your device. But don't forget, average weekly demand, it's the difference between the maximum stock level and the minimum stock level divided by how long it takes for that difference to be used up, isn't it? So in this case, I think it's 75, isn't it? So we sell, it looks like from the chart, it looks like stock falls by 300 sheds over the period between getting new stock in and getting, and then, reaching the minimum stock level. So that's 300 sheds every 4 weeks, which I believe is 75 sheds, isn't it? Because it's over a 4-week period. So I think that's correct. Next question. What's the normal level of buffer inventory currently held by garden rooms? If you got that chart there, what would be the buffer inventory, sometimes otherwise known as the buffer stock level? What is the buffer stock level for there? The buffer stock level, lots of people going for 100 sheds. It is indeed, isn't it? Yeah. So don't forget this whole idea of buffer stock. It's this contingency. It's the stock that we hold to be able to, in the case of something going wrong, you can make a link between buffer stock and contingency planning. Could do in theory. And the idea is that, you've got something in stock in case, for example, you suddenly get a surge of people wanting a shed or a particular type of shed. Or you get to overcome maybe a delay from the supply. Maybe the suppliers run out of nails and wood, or whatever. So yeah, it is indeed 100. And it's the minimum stock level, isn't it? Good stuff. Let's do another question. What is the normal lead time? What is the normal lead time for delivery of sheds from suppliers to garden rooms? What do we think? Now this time you'll need to use one of the 3 horizontal lines, the average lead time or the normal lead time. What do we think? Don't forget, a lead time is the difference between deciding to place an order when an order is triggered and receiving the inventory. And lots of people are saying 14 days, 2 weeks, and it is indeed. Well done. It is indeed 2 weeks, isn't it? So, for example, at week 10, we can see that our stock level reaches the reorder level of 250 sheds. At that point, Mrs. Shed in the shed office says, we need some more, please. They send an order to suppliers, and indeed, 2 weeks later, our sheds arrive. Probably a big lorry with a lot of sheds on it, which is known in the trade as a shed load. Now, well done. So it is indeed 2 weeks. Superb stuff. But we're going to finish this session off for the last 5 minutes by applying this data in the context, excuse me, of a 9-mark question. So I could see a situation where, I'm not suggesting it's going to happen, but I could see a situation where you get a mini case study with, let's say, an inventory control chart on it. And there could be a little calculation like we've just done there, but it could also be that there is maybe a 9 or even a 16-mark question that invites you to apply that data in the context of the business situation. So here's our question. The management of garden rooms are concerned that the business holds too much inventory. They decide to lower the minimum stock level to 50 sheds and decrease the reorder quantity to 200 sheds. Analyse the possible impact on Garden Room Limited's competitiveness. Well, what happens in the live chat? What are the potential consequences here of doing that? Obviously, one of which is going to be lower inventory, which could be a benefit to the business. But what do you think? So what are the potential consequences? So Bino's come up with a good one here. I'm not going to stick it on screen because it's going to just get in the way of the diagram there. But thank you very much. A superb answer. A positive benefit, positive consequence on competitiveness. Significant reduction in working capital tied up in inventories, which can be used elsewhere in the business, such as a new promotional strategy in the out-of-season months to help spread and increase demand for sheds. That is a sensational response. That is absolutely fantastic. Let's say £200 a shed, and you reduce your minimum stock level by 50. You're saving a lot of cash, which you can reinvest in promotion to maybe sell more sheds. Fantastic. Yeah, I know that football's on shortly. We can miss the first couple of minutes to finish this question. However, lots of people are saying, well, actually a downside is they may not be able to respond as well to sudden increases in demand. So Arian's saying that. So's Neve. Neve's saying less ability to meet demand. Kirsty's making the link to competitiveness. It's actually a positive impact on competitiveness. Lower cost, lower inventory, therefore they can lower their prices. But as Noah says, if demand suddenly increases, they don't have enough stock. Customers could go elsewhere. So you wouldn't have to actually draw the chart, but if you think about the implications of this, a lower reorder level down to 200 from 250 and a lower buffer stock level means that actually if demand continues to be 75 sheds a week, there's a danger that we could run out, isn't it? Because reordering is going to happen about 5-6 days or so later than normal. But the reorder level means that if demand continues, we're going to be dipping into that buffer stock and potentially even running out of buffer stock. So that's how you would apply. So the question is, how could you use that? Well, let's quickly unpick the demands of that question just to finish this session off. There's our question. 9 marks, analysis question, no evaluation. So let's quickly unpick what that question is about. So what's the start point and the end point, please, team business? Should be familiar with this concept now. What do we think? Don't forget, we've used this approach in all of our questions for 6, 9, 16, 25 marks. We unpick the question and then we decide how we best respond to the question by focusing on the demands of it. So the start point, as Sochi's point out, is inventory control, isn't it? Inventory management, a decision around how much inventory do we hold. And lots of people have said it's the end point is competitiveness. So that's where we have to try to get to our argument or arguments. How does this decision have an impact on the competitiveness of the business? How many points do we need to write to get 9 marks here? I know we've done this lots of times, but you'll be doing it at least twice more on the Thursday. 2 9 markers, I think. Sochi said 1. We only need 1 point, don't we? Why? Because it's the possible impact. It doesn't say analyze 2 effects or 2 impacts. Analyze the possible impact. So you can write as many points as you want, but we only need 1 to meet the demands of this question. But we do need to focus on an impact. And an impact could be positive or it could be negative. So it's up to you. We've seen some great answers in the live chat suggesting either a positive effect on competitiveness as well as a negative effect. Jennifer, we're going to go through the paper structure in our warm-up tomorrow night in some detail, so hopefully that's useful. So you can get 9 marks for writing 1 paragraph in response to this question, because that's the demand of the question. Analyze the possible impact. So there's no point writing when you don't need to. So I've had a go at an answer. What do you think to this? So it's a pecan paragraph. So our first sentence is the point we're going to explain, the PE. And that up to that first full stop, no, you don't want application in there. Okay, or you don't want to be developing your argument or trying to apply the chart in there. State the point and then go on to explain how and why that, in the context of garden rooms, how and why it impacts competitiveness. And don't forget, no evaluation. So we don't need a pie sentence. There's no point writing any evaluation for 9 mark questions. So here's my point. Competitiveness could be damaged if garden rooms runs out of sheds and is unable to meet demand, leading to lower customer satisfaction and potentially lost business. That's what I'm going to try to explain, how and why that happens. So all I now need to do is to use the inventory control chart and my knowledge of the information we've been given about the shed market to try to explain to the examiner how and why that happens. And then I was saying my structure says you need 2 pecans for 9 markers. No, 2 pecans if the question requires 2 arguments, 1 if it requires 1. So a consequence of lowering both the buffer stock level and the reordering level means that garden rooms will be holding 50% less in buffer stock, 50 shares less, and will place orders or reorders with suppliers later than at present. A 20% reduction in the reorder level. So How does that affect competitiveness? Well, if demand continues to average 75 sheds per week and the supplier lead time remains at 2 weeks, then there's an increased risk that garden rooms will have to use buffer stock to fulfill demand. A worse could be that it's unable to fulfill customer orders if the shed inventory falls to zero. In other words, it uses all its buffer stock. Consequently, which is one of the best analytical words, consequently, customers may have to wait several weeks for their sheds to be installed, or worse, customers may opt to use a competitor such as B&Q or Homebase instead, thereby damaging both sales revenue and levels of customer satisfaction. So in other words, you're losing business, you've got lower customer satisfaction because you've either just not got other sheds in or the right shed in stock, or you're going to have to wait for your shed. In other words, disappointed customers. That's a potential consequence of lowering the amount of inventory. Now, it might be that you can persuade customers to wait, but it could be that you can't. Therefore, you lose competitiveness. Millie, the garden rooms case study is in the Grade Booster course, so it's uploaded there to the Grade Booster course. What I'll do is I'll add it as preview format, so you can just go in. If you're not already enrolled, you can go in and get it. So that's my response. I think that would be 8 or 9 out of 9. Don't know what you think. I think it explains a consequence, an impact on competitiveness as a consequence of that change in inventory management. And I've just highlighted in red there just 2 or 3 different ways in which, you don't have to use all of these, but different ways in which you can apply the case study using quantitative skills. So, for example, I've spotted that the buffer stock level is fallen to 50 sheds. That's a 50% reduction. I'm manipulating data. The reorder level is 20% lower, 50 sheds lower. I've used an average demand 75 sheds per week. I may have been asked to calculate it, but if I wasn't, I've used it. And also, I've used words that are rooted in the context. So sheds get installed, don't they? Or delivered, but installed, assuming that the doors aren't hanging off. And also, I've used some nice such as seasoning there. So customers may opt to use a competitor. Rather than just saying use a competitor, why not use a competitor such as B&Q or Homebase, somewhere else, or Argos, where you might also buy a wooden shed. So just try to add some application into that response, and I think that's the key thing to with all of these questions is with quantitative skills. It's not just the calculations. Clearly, there are marks going for that, but also it's applying the data you get given to help season and help reinforce your analysis. Casey's asking, do you need to do evaluation for this? No, because it's a 9-mark question, Katie, so there's no evaluation in a 9-marker. If it was a 16-marker, for sure, evaluation all the way. But this is a 9-marker. So just AO1, AO2 and AO3. Jennifer's asking, can we go over Ped and Yed tomorrow? Absolutely. So what I'll do let's just go back to the screen there. So the live chat for tomorrow night's warm-up is now live. So what I'll do is I'll post a link on a comment on there, and just to say if there's anything specific you'd like us to go through tomorrow night, just add it in the live chat. We'll be able to pick that up and make sure we've added it to the content, to the information we've got, which we can use during the session. And of course, there'll be opportunities to post questions into the live chat as well. And it's 7 p.m. tomorrow night, Harry, is the time. A 20 marker, we've got some questions about 20 markers. Well, we're going to deal with those for paper 3 because there's no 20 markers in paper 2, and we're going to do lots of stuff on paper 3, the big case study paper. So maybe we'll wait for that for our paper 3 sessions. Good stuff, right? Yeah, Jamie's asking, can we do globalization? Yeah. Jennifer, we'll do that. I don't know how long the warm-up session will be. The one we did for paper 1 we intended it to be 45 minutes and it ran on to 2 hours, but it'll be as long as it needs to be. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Anyway, look, I'm gonna take a break there. So please spread the word about tomorrow night. If anyone wants to dip into the session and ask a question, feel free to do so. And as I say, use the live chat to post particular topics that you'd like me to include. I'll make sure that I pick up all of those before we get going. And anyway, thanks for joining me live for this. And if you've been watching on replay and you've stayed to the end, well done. Hopefully you found it useful, and see you later.